on or about 6:30. We're going to bring this virtual meeting of the Easton Conservation Commission to order. Just a couple things to note. This is a remote meeting using Zoom technology, obviously, due to the state of emergency initiated March 12th in response to COVID-19. This meeting is obviously being recorded, both audio and video, available for later playback. Applicants will be given the opportunity to assume remote control of the hearings and make presentations as needed. Please note, on April 6th, the Commission delegated signature authority to Stefan Coutinho and/or Andrea Langhauser for all decisions issued during the duration of the emergency. And we are going to play under those rules. First up, we have 64 Gilmore Road. Okay, I can show you this is a project in town in need of a septic upgrade. They are pumping at least every 2 weeks, and they're while taking their laundry off site. So an application has been filed for June 8th, notice of intent. But if she gets a contractor in place beforehand, under the authority of the Board of Health, calling this a septic failure, I'd like to issue an emergency certification to allow the work. It's a Collins Engineering project. I've already reviewed it, and all the requirements that we would require for erosion control and protections for a septic upgrade are identified on the plan. So I have no questions. I was out at the site, and it's a pretty level site, so even erosion control is really not going to be a big issue here on this site. So. Anybody else have any questions?
I'm all set. I think it's fine with me.
Site looks good.
Yeah, me too.
So you need me to make a motion to authorize you to issue an emergency certification when the time comes?
Yes, please.
I make a motion to give Andrea Langhauser permission to issue emergency certification for 64 Gilmore Road if the time comes prior to their June 8th notice of intent hearing.
Thomas, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay, so next up is 14 Morse Road. So do we know who's here for this one? I know it was Bob Rogers was one of them.
Bob Rogers?
GAF Engineering. Oh, yeah, Bob Rogers from GAF Engineering. I believe the applicant is also signed in, I think, Jeffrey Cutter. But so if I bring up the sewage disposal system, so this is the notice of intent plan, which was revised after the initial review.
Do you want me to share the screen? Get the septic plan up?
Yes, can you see it on my screen?
Nope. Let me. Rory, do you want me to give him the screen, or do you want?
Oh, okay. I have it on my screen.
I don't see where I have the permission to give him.
So you go to Bob Moore, make co-host. Make Bob Rogers co-host, and then we'll let him share the screen.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't have the ability to make him co-host for whatever reason.
You don't? Okay. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Let's not.
Screen sharing.
Okay. I can make him co-host. I don't know how it doesn't tell me how to share the screen with so many co-hosts. So I'm just going to do it myself. Okay, Bob.
Yeah, sure.
Will you be able to see our screen?
soon
I'm
as-
seeing you, but I'm not seeing my light on my camera, so I don't know if you turned off my video still.
You should be able to start your video now, Bob.
So this
Now I'm
is,
frozen.
Hold on, now I'm gonna get, let me get back so I can share the screen. There we go, share screen. Okay,
Okay, I'm back.
can you see,
okay, great. So
can you see the
So
site?
this is the septic system design drawing that is up now. This is the project. It's a single family house, on-site septic system, the water line, the driveway. So this is the notice of intent that we filed that was reviewed, which we then responded to. This project, I'm going to switch plans now. So this project was two lots. The Morse Brothers Incorporated created two lots out of this 232 acre piece. And so lots A and B were basically created to allow Morse Brothers to, they would sell these lots to allow the 230 acres to remain in agricultural use. And so since it was in Chapter 61, the town had the right of first refusal. And actually, this lot B was purchased back in March by the town of Easton Affordable Housing Trust. And so when we talk about the public benefit in the report, the public benefit is the preservation of the agricultural use for the 230 acres and the fact that the town of Easton Affordable Housing Trust purchased Lot B to, I assume, to put an affordable housing unit on it. And so that this Lot B over here is now town of Easton as of March. So, now we're looking to just complete the benefit to Morse Brothers by allowing the sale of this lot. It's under agreement, but it's not going to be conveyed unless he has the ability to get a building permit. So we've made the driveway impervious crushed stone. We've put roof infiltration for the dwelling itself, so that it provides the mitigation for the impervious surfaces. And so I guess that's, I'd leave it at that and address any questions that you have or questions or comments from Andrea or any of the commissioners.
So I think the two issues, the two wetland resources that we have in play here, there's a agricultural pond, which is at the base of a very steep slope off to the north of the property. And then across Morse Road, between Morse Road and Foundry, there's another BVW in that land between those two streets, right?
Yes, that's correct. So we feel that there's no potential at all to impact the wetland on the other side of Morse Road. And what we've done is we've put a post and rail fence. There's a recommendation for conditions to put conservation markers on those posts. That's fine. But we don't see this project impacting either the agricultural pond or the off-site BVW.
So the one other question that I have here is that there has been grading done on this property already. Is that correct?
Well, it was the removal of the loam pile. So if you look, I don't know, I'm pointing at it, but earthen mound to be removed.
Yeah.
So there was basically a loam pile that was there for, I don't know how many years, but since the town, purchased Lot B and, Cutter's trying to develop on Lot A, and that loam pile straddled the property line. So, we basically advised Morse Brothers that they should remove that loam pile prior to conveyance to the town so that there wouldn't be a dispute as to whose material it was.
So, but the grade has changed at the rear of this property. I mean, it's probably about somewhere between 3 and 4 or 5 feet higher than what the normal grade was.
In the rear of the property?
The north side of the property before the slope.
It's not something I'm aware of, I guess. I know, I saw the picture in the report that, that showed the tracks, basically the level ground where the pile was, but I'm not aware of any fill that's been done.
I can show you a picture from Sunday if you want.
Sure, yeah.
I'll give you a share. New share. Who can I share to? No.
Our notation and our direction was to remove it, not to spread it all over the place without an order of conditions.
Okay, give me a sec. I'm just going to stop you for a second. Okay, so you should see that now. It's me standing about 8 or 10 feet below grade. That's the back part of the property, me looking south.
Okay, I definitely see what you're showing me. The pictures don't lie, correct?
That's where they moved the filter?
That's what it looks like to me, yeah. I mean, it's spread all over the property for sure, but towards the back part of this property, they leveled it out to that grade.
Okay.
Oopsie daisy. So,
Sorry for not picking that up. I haven't been to the site recently.
The other thing was, I think, go this way. So this is at the base of one of those big pine trees that's in the middle of the property that someone has trimmed all the low-hanging branches off of. That's got to be a couple of feet of fill around the base of that tree, which isn't going to do anything for a few years, but eventually that's going to kill that tree.
Yeah.
And there's actually a second tree like this on the property as well. I'm just bringing this issue up because I think these are going to have to be addressed in conditions to have this resolved.
Right. Yeah. It baffles me. I don't understand what the benefit of doing that was.
No, and there's probably plenty of rock on that property to surround that tree to stop that from happening. So.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're happy to have a special condition for restoration of that type of thing, and to make sure that there's no filling or earth work that goes beyond what we've submitted as a limit of work.
This is within the limit of work, Bob. Those trees.
Excuse me, it's within the limit of work?
Don't you think, Rory?
The trees are definitely within the limit of work. I don't think the grading on the back of the property is within the limit of work. So.
do we want to do something in the meantime to keep that from running downhill?
It looked pretty stable when I was there, and they've had that property graded for a couple of months. So if it hasn't moved in the last in the last few months with some of the rain we've had, I think it's pretty stable. I agree with the concern, but being out there, I don't think it's going anywhere at this point.
So,
but it should be stabilized at some point.
So I think, Bob, Rogers, create a condition that says create tree wells and move excess loam to within limit of work, something like that.
Yes, that's fine. I don't know exactly where that tree is, but if it's in what we're showing as a yard area, that's a perfectly reasonable condition.
Two trees, Rory?
Yeah, there were two trees like that, yeah. Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
Sure. I'm not knowledgeable about if when the town purchased the other lot, that there was some kind of written agreement that was a piece of public benefit, or was that, I'd like to hear a confirmation of that.
We did
Okay,
purchase, the town has the right of first refusal for lot B. Is it on the warrant for purchase?
Well, no, the sale has gone through. The town had the right of
They use
first refusal
they
over
use
the entire 232 acres. The Affordable Housing Trust purchased Lot B in March, I believe, around March 12th. So the sale has gone through, and the town has taken ownership of that lot.
Right. So what I'm asking is, was there some agreement in that transaction that was an act of, public benefit or public interest? Was it sold at market rate? What's the agreement?
Well, I believe the lot was purchased at market rate, but for the purposes of adding to the affordable housing stock of the town. So I'm saying there's two public benefits: the preservation of the 230 acres under an agricultural use, and the purchase by the town. They did not want to take the 230 acres. They didn't want Lot A, but they were happy to purchase Lot B for the affordable housing.
Right. I understand that.
I hear what you're saying, Carol. Can I answer?
Please.
So there isn't a specific statement in the purchase of Lot B that it have anything to do with public benefit relative to the wetland bylaw. It is purchased by the town for Affordable Housing Trust. And you can draw your own conclusions as to whether that's a public interest. When that project comes forward for the construction of the home on it, I imagine the fact that it's going to have an affordable restriction will weigh as a public interest in your review. The preservation of the remaining acreage in agricultural use was not property that was offered to the town. It's still in chapter 61, I believe, but the way the chapter 61 program is set up, the town only has the right of first refusal when a bona fide purchase and sale agreement comes in. So perhaps Mr. Rogers can speak to the Morse brothers about preserving the remaining land in agricultural use, if you would consider that to be a public interest. There is the Agricultural Preservation Restriction Program, and I know that when this right of first refusal came up, the Ag Commission in Easton wanted to go on record to say they very much would like to see the rest of the land stay in agricultural use.
Right. So we would have to have the applicant prove that there is a.
You could ask if he's willing to put the property in an agricultural preservation restriction. It's
right.
A process like a conservation restriction done through the Department of Agricultural Resources.
Right.
Well, all we're working with is Lot A. So I'm trying to provide a rationale for the language in your bylaw that says that if we're in an ACEC and we're creating impervious surface within a certain distance from the wetland, that it needs to be for public benefit. So I guess I'm taking a step back to the creation of Lot A and Lot B and the 230 acres. You know, I'm looking at the big picture, because in terms of Lot A and what we're asking for an order of conditions, you know, the public benefit just becomes monetary in terms of property taxes to the town, where you're not getting any property taxes from it, you know, when it was in agricultural use, where you were getting substantially less. So I'm trying to say, let's look at the big picture. And the town has chosen to put a future affordable house on Lot B. You know, we want to complete the project by allowing the sale of Lot A to happen with an order of conditions that allows for a single family home.
So I think that one of the concerns I have about using Lot A as the public interest is that you know, that certainly was also in the personal interest of the seller and the applicant, and it wasn't. You know, it was sold at market value to the buyers. So I'm not sure. Ultimately, it may benefit the public, but I don't think that this lot A is tied into that. They were separate lots, so I'm not sure I, you know, agree with that. That is the public interest for Lot A. But Andrea, can we just go back to one thing? So if he so he's not putting pervious materials within the 100-foot buffer zone. Is he? I think that in a note that I saw was it they were going with a gravel driveway?
That's correct.
Crushed stone.
Yeah, sorry, crushed stone, right.
There was a long discussion. Bob and I had a long discussion about the difference between gravel and stuff that stays pervious.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we chose the 6-inch layer of crushed stone over a filter fabric to separate it from the underlying soil. And I did a quick drainage calculation that, you know, that basically shows with the sand underneath the crushed stone that basically there's no runoff whatsoever generated from the driveway, as long as it's constructed, you know, in accordance with the spec. Same thing with the roof. The roof infiltration units are capable of infiltrating a 6-inch storm in 24 hours.
So Andrea, I guess my question is that if all the impervious area in this plan is outside of the buffer zone.
Once he made the gravel drive, once he made the drive pervious, you're correct.
So do we need a waiver here?
He mitigated it. He found a reasonable alternative to not to pervious.
Right. So Bob, I'm curious about
You don't need a waiver because now he has a pervious surface.
Right.
So we don't. So since we don't need the waiver, we don't need the public interest any longer
for that particular waiver.
There is no other waiver.
I thought we need 3 waivers for this.
Oh Lord.
That was yeah, and I did address that
wildlife habitat.
Right. Andrea, your comment 15. The
Yep.
proposed project will also require 3 waivers.
It's 50,
that's from the original submittal.
Yeah, it's all relative to the driveway, and because the driveway is within the 100 feet of the ACC. Where's the 50-foot buffer zone? I see the 100-foot. The 50-foot buffer zone is not a problem in the back. So, so it's 100 feet. The 100-foot pervious. It's 50 feet from the wetland on the other side of Morse Pond is the driveway. the house is within 100 feet buffer zone of bordering land subject to flooding.
Yeah,
And
that was,
outside the 100 feet of, it's outside the 100 feet of the agricultural pond. Do you need me to share the screen to see this,
Yeah, I'm not.
the site plan? Thank you very much, Carol. It's been a while since I've looked at this.
Yes, no worries.
I'm not sounding too smart today. There we go. Share screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the pond. Here's the 100 feet from the pond. 100-foot buffer zone to agricultural pond. Okay. This is 50 foot to the bordering land subject to flooding, which is also known as the flood zone. And then this is the 100 foot right here. And so the house is within the 100-foot buffer zone of bordering land subject to flooding, which in an ACEC is a waiver. I got to tell you, I wasn't focusing on that. I don't think I have to tell you. I think you can tell I wasn't focusing on that because this over here is, this is a BVW, and here's the 100-foot buffer zone to that BVW. So this driveway became pervious, so that waiver no longer was needed. And so now we're talking about the house itself being within 100 feet of bordering land subject to flooding, which is the flood zone. There is no alternative analysis. There is no reasonable alternative to locating a house within that buffer zone because there's no other place to put the house and it's a buildable lot. He didn't make that argument. I didn't ask him to. My apologies. That is the waiver that's left, Rory.
Okay.
And it's work in the rare habitat. The habitat is, this area is mapped habitat because it was undeveloped and associated with the wetlands in the agricultural land. The Department of Fish and Game, the Natural Heritage Endangered Species, has already issued a determination that that development of this house lot would not result in a take.
Do we have that letter on file?
Yes, we do. We do, and it's referenced in the staff report. I can double check to make sure that it's in the.
I have it on my.
It is in permitize. It's a standard letter. They generally allow. They generally allow house lots, but that's true. But that's what it is. They're not going to require a state permit.
Okay, so I mean, I think that from my read of the land subject to flooding, given that there's about a 20-foot difference between where the land subject to flooding is and this property is the adverse effect on that's probably pretty low. It's just now we're into the public interest again.
Thank you, Carol.
Sure. I wanted to circle back to the permeable pavement, the crushed stone.
With filter fabric.
It sounds like gefilte fish, the filter fabric. So what do we know about the longevity of that fabric and that stone? What happens 20 years from now, 30 years from now?
Well, if the fabric were to break down, basically the stone would push down into the underlying sand. This area, is basically medium sand and gravel. It's less than 2 minutes an inch. We had the test pits for the for the septic system. They're on the drawing, but you know, so you use a Cultec 410 filter fabric that's made to promote drainage, and but you know, it provides a certain longevity of separation between the sand and the stone. The homeowner is going to be responsible for having to maintain the stone surface and, you know, raise the plow up and those types of things. But it's not like a gravel or a stone dust that's going to compact, and so that's why we specified crushed stone. Crushed stone, it'll compact, but not to the point where it'll become impervious like a gravel will.
Would you like would you like Bob Rogers to do an O&M plan,
What does that mean?
an operation plan, and a maintenance plan for the future landowner so that they know how to maintain it properly?
Sure. And
Well, I think just approval of the plan with it specifying the crushed stone driveway is sufficient. You know, if it was a drainage system and not a driveway, you would say that if the crushed stone became compromised, you would rip it out and put down new stone. You know, that's about as low maintenance as you can get, 3/4 inch and a half crushed stone.
right,
It's
so
going to be keeping it off the lawn and reshaping it after snow plowing events is all you're going to have to do.
right. So I understand that, and you know, in the short term, you know, soon after construction for a few years. But you know, what I want to see is a case study of 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you know, as organic matter infiltrates into the gravel, you know, what happens?
Well, the order of conditions is only good for 3 years, I guess I would say, and I don't know if there's such a case study. I mean, we're putting crushed stone on top of medium sand, and it's gonna, you know, it's about as good as it gets in terms of infiltrating rainwater.
Right. So is there a way to condition it so any owner could never pave it?
Yes, it's a perpetual condition if you so choose.
We're fine with it. You know, everything becomes an enforcement issue, but we're fine on a prohibition on a pervious, I'm sorry, a prohibition on paving, and you know, that it's got to be as per the plan, a crushed stone driveway.
Right. Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions, John or Mike?
I mean, I would agree to the potentially making it where we cannot pave it down the road. But other than that, no, I have no real comment.
I guess my only concern would be, you know, potentially the buyer of this house, you know, if it gets transferred to the next owner, they're going to need to know that information. So as long as that's kind of addressed, I guess, for any sort of potential buyer of this property, that in the future that they're not allowed to pave that area, so that way they don't buy this house and find out they can't pave the driveway. I think that would be something that, you know, would need to be addressed for any sort of potential buyer.
Yeah, this, you know, right now there is no buyer. They're going to build a nice home, and they're going to make it as nice as they can, and they'll sell it, you know, as per the order of conditions and per the as-built. You know, like anything else, if anyone wants any changes, they would be their responsibility to apply for amended order of conditions, file a new notice.
What John is bringing up is a legitimate enforcement issue, that we make something a perpetual condition. It shows up in the certificate of compliance after the certificate of compliance is issued. It's specifically listed as ongoing, but you actually have to read the document to see that. Most title searches see order listed. They see certificate of compliance with the same file number, and they say, oh, good, the project's closed out. So the way past commissions have done, have tried to handle that situation, they've asked for a deed restriction, so it actually gets shown, it's shown on the deed itself. In coming in as a commission support person after those deed restrictions have been requested, I can tell you that they haven't had a lot of compliance with actually getting the words on the deed. But that's what's going on. Those are your two options. Make it a perpetual condition or put it in as a deed restriction. And your third option, of course, is have your agent drive down the street every 3 or 4 years.
The least desirable option.
Yeah.
So I think there's a way for us to sort of, my preference, and certainly historically we've done that as a condition and make it a perpetual condition in the certificate of compliance. I mean, it is one of the risks that we take when we deal with pervious material in a when we're trying to eliminate the impervious surfaces. So the issue will be and is about the waiver request on this, and for working within the buffer zone of bordering land subject to flooding and an ACDC.
Having a hard time hearing you, Rory.
Okay, we'll try again. So I think that the challenge here is to make sure that that we get this waiver request done for the working in the buffer zone on the bordering land subject to flooding within an ACDC. That's our challenge here.
I just want to understand that, because I know there was a request for us to show a buffer zone to the BLSF, but again, bordering land subject to flooding, it's an elevation, and so I mean, and we are 20 feet above that. It just doesn't, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong. I just, the significance of a horizontal setback to BLSF escapes me.
So I think that there's I think there's three components to a waiver. One is alternatives, whether there's a practicable alternative that would not have the work being done in the buffer zone. I think that is easy enough for you to explain on this particular project, because almost anywhere you put this house on this piece of property is going to be in that buffer zone. Secondly is, does it have any significant adverse impact on the wetland resource? And as you've rightly stated, probably is that this land 20 feet in elevation higher than the bordering land subject to flooding is unlikely to have any significant impact, adverse impact on that bordering land subject to flooding. And the third component of a waiver request is public interest, and how is this project in the public interest? So
right,
the waiver is typically done in a letter format where you'll outline all three of those components.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I understand that, but on the review letter, item number 15, it only references buffer zone to BVW. It doesn't reference buffer zone to BLSF.
I think that the staff report was originally done before the BLSF was actually on the drawing, so I think it was added at a later time.
We added the buffer zone. We always showed the BLSF. So
you need a waiver, Bob. It's a waiver that it's a waiver that the commission members are all saying they're positively responsive to, but they need something as a public interest. Can I ask that the landowner consider permanently preserving the remaining acreage in agricultural use? Take all reasonable measures to, or explore options to preserve land in agricultural use.
We don't have any ability to control anything other than this lot A. We don't have the ability, this applicant.
I thought the applicant was Morse Brothers.
No.
Well, no. So Morse Brothers Incorporated is the owner, and the applicant is Morse Farms, Morse Farm Trust, I believe, is on the plan. But so they're in the business of building and selling single-family homes. Morse Brothers Inc. continues to be the landowner, but as soon as we have the ability to get a building permit, then this property would transfer to the applicant.
So I don't understand. The current landowner is Morse Brothers Inc. But,
Correct.
But the property is being developed by Morse Farm.
Correct.
No, Morse Brothers.
No relation between the two. I'm sorry. This is the applicant.
Okay.
Jeffrey Cutter.
Oh, thank you.
Relation.
Who are you in the list of attendees?
Jeffrey Cutter.
Top one, Jeffrey Cutter.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Morse Brothers created these two lots, as you know, and wanted to sell it. They're selling a bunch of properties, and I offered to buy them both, which actually created a price that was at the very low end of market rate. And one of the perceived benefits might be that the town actually was able to exercise their right on one of the lots at a price that was probably below market of what they would have had to pay had they gone out on the market. I'd say about 20%, somewhere around, well, below. Let's just say below.
Sir, you agree to that price, is that right?
So I personally think that we shouldn't get into that discussion. I don't think that's the public benefit that we can portray onto this lot. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's my own, I mean, I can have a conversation with Andrea off after the meeting to have maybe some further questions about it, but I don't know how others feel about it. My own is that the lots were separated, and you know there was personal interest in you selling that land too. You know, I don't want to get into what price was paid for it and whatnot. And to be quite honest, this is a very approvable project, in my opinion. And we just need a properly formed waiver request in order to get there. And yes, the most difficult part of a waiver request is the public interest. There's no question about it. I shouldn't say most times it's the most difficult part about it, is understanding the public interest. Why is this one in the public interest? Or is there something about the project that we can do to make it in the public interest? And that's what Andrea was trying to, say, because she thought there was a link between the two. There isn't. So the agricultural restriction it gets a little bit, doesn't get us anywhere at this point because they're not the same entity. But things like that do happen when we talk about public interest. I mean, there's conservation restrictions that happen. There's land that gets deeded to the town. There's all sorts of things to ensure that some portion of land remains in its current state that helps benefit the town. That's some ways it's done. There's plenty of other ways that it's done as well. So.
Well, I guess if we're having this, I mean, maybe we should have a continuance. I'm just concerned that that we may be assigning jurisdiction to the buffer zone to the BLSF that isn't in the bylaw. I really thought that the waiver went away with the crushed stone driveway versus the previous notation that it could potentially be paved.
Okay. Well, I mean, we couldn't close tonight anyway because we don't have a waiver request in front of us. So.
Correct, because I thought we
it's okay.
designed that out of the project.
I know, and I started down that road myself tonight too, so we got clarification on that, so I think we're good. I think we've lost one of our board members.
Okay.
Just let's give her 1 second to come back here. So I would agree that we get a continuance here, and you can get clarification on the bordering land subject to flooding and the buffer zone there, and whether it's triggering your waiver request. and when that's determined that we need a waiver request, we can put one together, and we can then review the waiver request. Are there any other questions from the board members, the commission members, for the applicant to see if before he comes back before us?
Rory, I have nothing to add. I'm good.
John?
Nothing further from me.
Okay. I think I've got to wait for Carol to come back here for just 1 second. So from my standpoint, to give you some direction here, I think you've got a clear path forward here. While we need to get a question answered, it's just that one question, and depending on that question, it depends on whether or not you have a waiver, you need a waiver or not. And then I think we can vote on the project. My goal is to get you out of here today with you know what you need to do and to get there the next time. So that's what I want to do for you. So that's
yes, sir. No, very much appreciate it.
Andrea, any suggestion here since we lost Carol?
You have a quorum.
Oh, can we get her on the phone? Can we call her?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Text.
Well, yeah, because we are requesting a continuance for 2 weeks to be able to answer the question about the BLSF.
I agree. So I'm gonna, since we do have a quorum, I'm gonna make a motion to continue 14 Morse Road until our next meeting on June 8th.
Spady, a second.
All those in favor?
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. And Lundin is absent. So we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Very much.
Yep.
Okay, so next up is 77 North Main.
That would be me.
I did hear from Carol. She's having a problem, and she's addressing it. She didn't ask me a specific question. North Main.
Yep. So
Keith.
I'm here, Keith Trzynski.
Okay. Keith Eldridge, can you please send Carol Lundin the telephone number?
Yes, I will.
I just lost my permit eyes. Keith, the applicant, is asking for is asking for an above ground pool in his residential backyard.
And you want me to share something?
Yeah, okay, because I'm trying to pull it up. I told you I'd be slow.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just trying to. So.
I'm sorry, Andrea. Did you want me to text that to her or just send her an email?
Please text her.
I don't have her phone number.
Okay.
And you probably don't want to give it over the
No, I don't. You're right.
Zoom meeting.
Okay. I'll take care. Keith, I'm going to send you, Keith Eldridge, I'm going to send you something.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just, I have to, this didn't come in as a PDF, it came in as a JPEG, so I'm just,
Sorry, Andrea, the phone number is at the top of the agenda, which was on the binder information that was sent out earlier.
okay, so this is a image of the
You can tell I'm not an engineer.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah.
So tell us a little bit about it, Keith.
Sure. So yeah, we have you know, when we bought the house in '07, we have a good defined fence line that we do have a fenced in backyard that defines the wetlands. In the middle of the yard, it's if you see that kind of like little stone circle there, right in that area, a little bit forward towards the house, we are looking to install a 24-foot round above ground pool. We have a pretty flat, I would say, very flat backyard. So I don't believe much digging will be involved for the pool. Probably just a skimming of the top of the lawn. And at that point, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just a above ground pool going on grass. But we are like it's around like 50 feet to the wetlands. I guess that's about it. All I have.
The wetland, on the staff report, second page of the staff report is a photograph of what Keith just described, the little rock planting area looking back toward the fences. I can share that on the screen.
I put some pictures, Andrew, I also put some pictures on the permit too of the yard, like defining the full fence line too.
Right.
That helps.
So the wetland is right on the other side of the fence just inside the woodlands. And there's a stone wall.
Can you see that now?
Well, I'm still viewing your screen, Rory.
No, I'll open it again.
Okay.
That's the backyard.
Yeah.
So just the wetlands in question here is an intermittent stream or a perpetual stream?
Intermittent. It will flow. It'll flow in the spring. Pretty much in the spring, like after the runoff that from the winter or all the rains that will get, but they'll pretty much dry up in the summer.
Right. So it's about a foot and a half wide, about a foot deep right now. That's my best guess. I didn't go in, but that would be about my guess. So
yeah, that'll dry up in the summertime. Yeah.
So the stream is probably about 10 feet behind that fence, maybe 15, somewhere around. The one issue that that I saw when I was out there is you can see it on this picture. To the right of that gate, there's a big debris pile. It's probably about 10 feet long, maybe 5 feet wide, about 3 feet high. It's leaves, grass clippings, probably some branches too that have come down. And I think that we certainly need a condition here that prohibits that kind of dumping next to the stream. So.
I'm sorry, Roy, I couldn't hear that last part.
So I think that we probably need a condition here that that prohibits that kind of dumping on the next to the stream. So.
And I can work on removing that too. That was there when I kind of bought the house, and unfortunately, it's been used. But I can definitely remove some of that debris as well and get rid of all of it, pretty much.
Right. Anybody have any questions?
No, I think the pool checks out. I don't feel it's that close to that intermittent stream, and I'm cool with that. So.
No, it looks pretty straightforward for work within an existing lawn.
Yeah, and it is very flat. That picture is very representative of what that property.
Yeah, no grading needed on this one.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
So the other issue was that I think that is there any thoughts about putting on a pool deck or anything around the pool, or is that something that would come later?
It would probably come a little bit later, and I talked to Andrea about it. We probably would put like some stairs and a small landing, but it would be on the house side of the pool. It wouldn't be on the towards the wetlands. If we did anything, it would be on the house side of the pool, and it wouldn't. We have a patio, so we don't really need a deck or anything. So it really just, if anything, it'd be a nice set of stairs.
Okay. Andrea, any comments?
If you were feeling flexible, I would add that condition because it's an RDA and you don't want to have them come back. Also, I just want to note in the staff report that he did do a notice of intent in 2017 for the building addition. And so a certificate of compliance will be needed now that the addition is in place.
Okay, so we can, should we condition that in here?
I think we just need to tell you, Keith, that you owe us some paperwork.
So does that mean we can move forward with this? And I can give that to you at a certain time moving forward, or?
Yeah, that's, so once we vote on the determination here, then what Andrea is saying is a separate issue is you need to close out your other permit.
Okay, certificate of compliance, okay.
Right, so. So any other questions? Did we get Carol back on?
She's got the phone number now.
Is she on mute? Do I need to unmute her? There's two people on the phone.
Her number.
Which one is her? The 617 or the 508?
(617)
Carol, is that you?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry. So Carol, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Which application are we on, please?
We're on 77 North Main Street, the 24-foot round above ground pool in the backyard.
Right. Right. So to the applicant, I'm sorry, I forgotten your name. Have you ever seen an above ground pool collapse?
Have I ever seen one collapse?
Yes.
Maybe on a YouTube video, perhaps. Not live.
Right. So I've seen one collapse that was uphill of me, and I was kind of like standing at the kitchen sink doing the dishes, and all of a sudden I hear a sound, and there's this flash flood coming right towards my house. So these things do fail. So what I'm concerned about is if we have chlorine or bromine or other chemicals that have a good purpose of keeping the water clean, what happens if and when a 25-foot, that's the diameter, right? 25-foot pool collapses. Where's all that water going? And what's the impact it's going to have?
Don't really have any. It's a salt. We're getting a salt water generator. It won't be the chlorine, but yeah, I guess that does turn into some chemicals. I don't know I don't know what to tell you on that. Because it'd probably just go into the ground and maybe run off into the yard, perhaps in the wetlands. But I'm hoping I never have to deal with that.
I hope so too, but it does happen.
So the saltwater filters has been a condition in the past.
Yeah, so we had the salt water. We're getting the salt water conditioner in the pool, not chlorine. That eases your.
I don't know anything about it, but what I want to know is what's the insurance plan for the wetland if your pool collapses? I want you to have a pool. It sounds really fun, but I also want to protect the wetland. So I want some kind of insurance that if a collapse does happen.
So I think that this goes to a determination of applicability on this. So if there is, if we determine that there's a positive determination of applicability, he would have to require a notice of intent and address those issues. The best that we can do in this case is we can issue a negative determination of applicability and then put some conditions on it. If we need more than putting conditions on it, like we need a plan and stuff about some of this stuff, I think that we would have to go to a notice of intent. I mean, that's my thought process.
I think a determination and then some conditions sounds like a great idea for this.
that would be my preference on this, but it you know, so.
So if we, so this is a determination of applicability, is that right?
Correct, yeah, it's an RDA, yep.
Right, so that would mean that we don't have jurisdiction, is that right?
It means that we don't believe it's going to have an adverse impact on the wetlands as proposed.
We do have jurisdiction.
Right.
Sorry, say that again, Andrea?
It's a negative, the choice that the commission often uses is -2, which is there is jurisdiction, but as proposed and conditioned, the commission determines no negative impact.
Uh-huh.
So
okay.
my you know, so I think that I think the choice would be for us to have a vote to determine whether or not there is applicability here. And if we do make a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability, we can put some conditions on. I think once we get past a certain level, we would rather go with it is a positive RDA, meaning there is applicability, and we would be telling the applicant that he would need to go to the NOI stage and submit plans and everything else. So, any other comments?
Right, I would just sure like to see the wetlands protected in case of a failure. And I have no idea what that entails, and I think we should find out.
Okay. So, Mike, anything else? Mike, you're all set?
Yeah, I'm all set. Nothing to add.
John, anything?
No, nothing from me.
So I'm gonna make a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with the conditions that prior to any excavation, a straw wattle be installed to the back fence line and maintained until the pool is installed. Also, condition that the applicant uses a saltwater conditioner instead of chlorine or bromine. And additionally, no storage of any pool chemicals, salt, or otherwise in the backyard. And I also don't want to see any discharge of pool water into the wetland.
Absolutely. So like I said, we are getting the saltwater generator
So
condition.
Keith, I just made a motion, so just let us.
Right. Oh, thank you.
Yep. So.
I second that.
Yeah. This is Lundeen. I would like to add that salt is known for killing plants. So when we are ready to vote, I guess I would vote first. I'm a nay on this.
Okay, so
negative determination.
So Lundeen's a nay.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay, so that's it, Keith. We issued a negative determination of applicability, which means you can move forward with the project given the conditions that we attached to that. So
thank you very much.
You need to talk to Keith and Andrea, and also make sure to close out that other permit.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks. Okay, next up is 16 School Street.
That's Bob Fitzgerald.
Brad,
sorry. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
Yes.
Andrea, would you be able to put the plan up on the screen, please?
I have it, and let me share. It's embarrassing how long it takes me to get this right. Okay. Okay, share screen. Share screen. I'm having, there, got it. Whew. Who says, now you can see everything? Let me make this a little bigger.
So Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit about this?
Okay, this is an existing house with a septic system that is in the back easterly portion of the lot, well within it straddles the 50-foot buffer zone from the edge of wetland. We're proposing a new system that would go to the north of the house, increasing that separation to 92 feet. The closest component would be the pump chamber behind the house, which would be about 82 feet from the edge of wetland. We are proposing erosion control to begin at the stone wall up near the proposed system, come down along the lawn area alongside the proposed septic tank and pump chamber. And as I said, the system's going up on top, it's up on a hill, and there will be a poly barrier around that system to prevent breakout. And then there'll be the finished grading. So it will be a little bit of a mound up there. But there's quite a bit of lawn area. The lawn area for the house actually extends beyond the property line, pretty much to the edge of the wetland. In conversation with Andrea today, we talked about rather than a fence, that we would maybe put some posts with the medallions on it. And I would propose that one would go on the southerly property line at the 25-foot buffer line, on that northeasterly property line at the 25-foot buffer line with it, you see the 26 on the bearing right there. And then about 80 feet northwest of that would be about even with the left side of the house. A little bit, yeah, right about there. So we'd have 3 posts with the medallions on them, stating that, and as I said, they would be right on the property line too. So it would be a good barrier to show the new owners that they don't own beyond that line.
Right.
And I have no problems with the perpetual conditions. And I did talk to the attorney Fletcher, who is representing the sellers, and told them about the debris. There's an old cement mixer in there, a couple of tires, and some leaves that would need to be taken out during the construction of the septic system. And we would make the contractor aware of that and have him make it part of his job to remove those items.
So how much elevation is going on
The system itself at the top, closest to the house, will be about 3 feet higher than existing grade. So where you see that 24-foot dimension from the house to the corner of the leaching field, that's going to be about 3 feet higher. And then as it goes up the hill, it's going to blend in and actually, so it's going to be almost like a, pool table coming along parallel to that existing wall. And then it will slope back down towards the house in the backyard.
Okay. What are we proposing for erosion control here?
The 12-inch silt sack, or not silt sack, I'm sorry, the
Filter mat. It's the biodegradable cover with compost fill.
Yeah, the filter mitt. Yeah, it's like a 12-inch diameter filled with compost that, if it's left there, will eventually break down into the soil. Most people would probably, after the grass is taken, they will probably pull it up because it is staked in. So they would be pulling the stakes out, and I'm sure they'd remove it and throw it away.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I'd like to say something. There goes Carol having to say something. So we, as we know, we do have jurisdiction, and as it says in 503(2A) 2B, where any component is within any resource area, because of the demonstrated potential for contamination of ground and surface waters from the effluent. And I know we have a policy about this, but I feel like it's not good enough because it allows for adverse ongoing cumulative impacts of the release of nitrogen that no wetland can mitigate. I think that if we're going to go to have a resource area go through the turmoil of and disturbance of the construction, why not at the same time install a system that actually stops the bleeding of nitrogen loads over time? We know that Title V systems will have cumulative impacts. And I will just add that the town of Stowe-Mass has clarified theirs, and maybe we want to in the future, septic systems that is to be constructed in compliance with the requirements of the Board of Health and with a permit issued by the Board of Health shall be presumed to protect the interests of the bylaw as long as none of the components of the system is located within any area subject to regulation. This presumption is rebuttable upon evidence showing that the proposed activity will not harm. And to me, that means if you get a system that takes out most of the nitrogen rather than lets it leak out over the lifetime of it.
Well, I would respond and say that, and you kind of jumped around there. That originally you said within resource areas. The system is not within a resource area; it's within a buffer zone to a resource area.
Under the excuse me, just a second, Brad. Under the local bylaw, the buffer zone is a resource area.
Okay.
And I suspect that in the town, which town did you mention, Carol?
Stowe.
Stowe, Mass.
I suspect their buffer zone is not a resource area.
So I think that one of the things, and I think that we've had this conversation a couple times, and I think there's general agreement that we need a conversation with the Board of Health to understand how we can come together on this particular issue, so that we can be in coordination on this. I think one of the challenges that we have as the Concom is that the Board of Health wants to approve one type of system, and we're suggesting a separate type of system. And so I think that this is one of those things that, as we talk about regulatory revisions, that we should probably put it onto the table of having that conversation with the Board of Health, so that we can all get on the same page about exactly what we'd like to see systems that are in a resource area, and how we want to handle those impacts to future generations to the resources. So I think that 100% what you're saying it has value to it. I just think that until we get that agreement with the Board of Health, it's difficult for us to sort of dictate to them what that system looks like, at least at this point. I mean, I think that they've told us so. So I think we have to sort of respect that and come to some agreement with them, rather than sort of dictating it through our own commission.
Right, I agree, and I will remind us that last year on Highland Street, the applicant and the Board of Health and the commission agreed on a system that is more robust in getting out nitrogen than the Title V. So we do have a precedent.
The reason that the distinguishing characteristics between this case and that one is that was in an ACEC for the Canoe River, which is state designated because of the quality and quantity of the groundwater used by 4 different towns for public drinking water supply. And because the zone of contribution of a public water supply was on the property and near the system, within 25 feet of the system. And it was those 2 features that made that site very distinguishable from the majority. I do have the denitrification systems on the list of regulatory revision discussions that is slated to go forward according to Chairman and Vice Chairman.
Okay, very good.
Any other questions?
I have nothing to add to this, Rory. I'm all set.
Yeah,
If I could step in real quick. Andrea, you don't have a file number listed on the agenda, but we do have a file number for this one. It's
Yes,
16.
I have it on my staff report,
Okay,
1633.
correct.
Yeah.
And the same with the next one.
Yeah, I got them both. And
Excellent.
And thank you also for posting your abutter notifications online. Each of the applicants, Conservation Commission members, I've been double checking to make sure that we get the abutter notifications posted prior to the hearing. So that normally that's handed to me at the meeting.
John, you had something to add?
No, I didn't. I just, I kind of understood it. I see that there's 5 test pits for the leaching field, and I'm guessing that the 2 locations were probably the best soils for the leaching field there.
That's correct.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry, I haven't been asking any public comment for 16 School Street. Seeing none, would you like to close? Brad?
Oh, yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so make a motion to close and issue a permit for work and order of conditions for 16 School Street as the conditions as listed in the staff report.
Spady, a second.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield, aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Good night.
so no, he's got one more in front of us.
Yes, I'm next.
863 Washington Street.
I'm pulling it up. You probably see me doing that with my fast fingers. Is Mr. Churchill here?
I talked to Mr. Churchill today. I believe he's probably watching it. And if there's any questions for him, he would call in. But I don't believe he's online unless he joined.
Okay, Brad, why don't you tell us about this one?
Okay, once again, Brad Fitzgerald from SFG Engineering. Once again, this is another septic system repair. It's another one where the existing system is way too close to the wetlands. In fact, this one is even closer than the last one we just did. So what we're proposing is to install a new septic tank with a pump chamber, and it's going behind the house as close as 26 feet to the wetlands because that's where the plumbing comes out below the floor of the house, and it cannot be raised or rerouted. So we have to come out there. The septic tank is actually on right near the edge of the patio, and then a pump chamber will be west of that. We're going to pump around in between the trees and the house, and then up to the front of the lot, up near the street, where we'll put in a system of, this one is actually more, I don't want to call it a full, it's a system, it's like concrete flow diffusers with the fins, plastic or rosin fins that provide extra cleansing. It also provides H20 loading, as is kind of an asphalt area up there that they would be using for parking. There will be a poly barrier, once again, around the system to prevent breakout. The grade up there won't be changing too much, maybe a foot higher. We are proposing erosion control going from the corner of the lot at 138 all the way down behind the house, between the wetland and the pump chamber, and all the way over to that shed by the storage trailer on the north part over near Birch Road. Once again, I did meet with a client out there today after seeing Andrea's report. I pointed out the debris that she mentioned in the wetlands, told him that that need to be removed. He said that that would be no problem. And the only other thing we talked about was possibly where to put some posts with medallions. We were thinking probably about 20 feet south of the shed corner, and then one over about just south of that double tree where the erosion control makes an angle, and then one up where the erosion control and the where the 25-foot buffer hits the property line right there. So we'd have 3 on this one also, which would clearly delineate that, no, nothing beyond this point.
So along the erosion control, is that what you're saying?
Well, on the back side of the house, it would be, yes, along the erosion control line, about 20 feet south of the shed. And then at that corner where the erosion control, kind of just south of that double tree where it turns and heads up to the property line.
Yeah.
We put one there where the 25-foot buffer hits the property line. Once again, it's all lawn till probably within 5 or 10 feet of the wetland. So the one behind the house would be out in the middle of his lawn. So I didn't want to put too many out there because I think if you have more than one, some of them may eventually disappear. And I think if you only have one, there's really no excuse for it to disappear.
Okay. So there's also a dumpster that's on the property. That's it's on the lawn of at the end of the driveway.
Yes, I saw that today.
So what's in that dumpster?
I don't know that answer.
Because having it be within, some 28, 30 feet of the wetlands is not the best situation.
Okay.
I mean, it's anything leaks out of that dumpster. I mean, if it's cardboard, that's one thing, but if there's other materials that are in there, I don't know what's leaking out of it when it rains.
Yeah, I have no idea either.
Andrew, I don't think in my 3 years I've talked about a dumpster.
No hazardous materials within 100 feet of or no petroleums, or we have that as a condition for petroleums, oils, storage of hazardous. We have that as a condition for construction, but we could tack it on. You could, if you wanted to call it an unauthorized structure, you would be evaluating it that way. But no, you have not gone inside metal containers in the past.
No, I just was a little surprised to see it where it was. So I know he doesn't want to put it in his front yard. I understand that. The property being right on Washington Street, but any other comments from anybody?
I mean, I agree with you, Roy. I don't really love the idea that there's a dumpster there and not knowing what's in it. I'm just not sure what we can do with that. So,
John,
no comments from me. I'd say that where they're proposing the new facility is the optimal location.
Any comments about the dumpster, John?
Oh, any comments regarding the dumpster? Sorry.
No. I'm just asking in general. I'm just looking for.
Is that where the storage trailer is? Is that the location where you saw it?
It's about 10 feet south of the storage trailer.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would want to know if there are any hazardous materials in there.
Okay. Carol, anything?
Agreed. I want to know what's in there, and not only what's in there, but how it got there, and what's the supply chain? How is that going to be stopped?
If you want to talk in terms of if you are otherwise comfortable with the project, then we might want to reword that as a condition, as opposed to I want to see. It might be a definitive, remove any offending materials, the hazardous, if there's any hazardous materials, petroleum, oils, removing.
I mean, any sort of chemicals or whatnot. I mean, this is a commercial property. I don't know exactly what the business is. I can't recall now that I saw the sign. I don't remember what it was.
Well, there's a standard proper storage and handling of hazardous materials. I could use something like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the condition we should probably put in here is that,
That would be fine with me.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission? If not, I'm going to go to public. Any public comment on 863 Washington? Raise your hand. So seeing no comments on 863, I'll make a motion to issue a permit for work and order of condition for 863 Washington Street. Debris shall be removed from the wetlands. No dumping in the wetlands should be identified as a perpetual condition. We're going to locate 3 permanent markers along the erosion control line, 20 feet south of the storage trailer or the shed. Another one is about the angle just south of the double tree, and again along the erosion control near the front side of the property. Also, we're going to make a condition that there should be no storage of any hazardous materials on the in the buffer, in the no disturb zone, especially as it relates to that dumpster. Should be free of any hazardous materials.
Spady, a second.
All those
Lundy, aye.
All those in favor?
Lundy, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield, aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we are on to 7 Glen Road.
We need to bring up the, there we go. Okay, there's Scott. And I saw your applicant is here as well.
I believe so.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
So just to give the commission a bit of a review on this, this was originally presented to us sometime last year as an ANRAD that we issued an ORAD on, and we got a notice of intent for a home, a second home on the property that's been subdivided, and we had some plans in front of us for which there was some discussion about the positioning of the home, and we've reconfigured the home. Am I the only one hearing that background noise?
I hear it.
No, I can hear it too.
Okay, let's see if I can identify who it is. And then there was also some discussion of the roadway being situated further away from 2 pieces of property, or 2 wetlands, the B and C series of wetlands. And the way we left it at that time was they needed to have a waiver for the work being done inside the buffer zone. So I think that's it. Where we were and where we are now is we have repositioned the roadway again. as I understand it. So Scott, why don't you tell us what's being presented to us today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott Farrier from Holmgren Engineering. As you said, we've gone through a couple of different plans here that we've submitted to you. What we have right now, we've consulted with David Gordon from Thunder Chase Environmental to try to get some insight from him as to what would be the best location for this new driveway and have the least environmental impact. As you said, we previously went to the planning board. The planning board granted a definitive subdivision approval and waived the roadway construction standards as far as width and drainage and things like that. The one condition that they did have was that the existing driveway be reconstructed. Right now it's a little bit beat up, so they wanted it to be reconstructed. So that's what we had shown on our original plan. And we've gone, as I said, we've gone back and forth a couple of times. What we have before you tonight is a plan that keeps the driveway where it is and just reconstructs it to subdivision standards as far as depth of construction and bituminous pavement widths and things of that like. But it stays in its existing location. And the main reason for that is, again, after going back and forth a couple of different times and staking it in the field, we just felt like moving it further away from the wetlands, further away from wetland series B and C would cause us to take down some trees that are there now, some mature trees, to move the driveway. There's a couple of rocks that would be in the way. In addition to that, we would obviously have to remove the existing driveway. So we would be doing, essentially disturbing a whole new buffer zone area of about 8,000 square feet to construct the new driveway and still be disturbing roughly another 8,000 square feet to take out the old driveway. So as I said, in consulting with David Gordon, we felt like perhaps the best thing would be to go back to the original plan, leave the driveway where it is, and try to explain to you folks why we felt like that was the best route going forward. So the plan we have before you, as I said, keeps the driveway where it is. We've proposed a grass swale alongside the northerly side of the driveway. If you were standing on Glen Road, working your way up towards the proposed house, it will be on the left side of the roadway, the driveway away from the wetland system. So hopefully that'll provide a little bit better stormwater treatment than what's out there now, and direct all the runoff from that bottom of the existing cul-de-sac on Glen Road and from our new driveway along that swale and eventually out to the rear of the property. So that is the short and the long of it, Mr. Chairman.
So I think that in the previous configuration of this road, there was a bioretention basin on the north side, right about where it says road on the Glen Road extension. Yes, right.
Yes.
So that was a feature that I think that made us very comfortable with what was going on in the overall impact of this particular property, because it allowed for better stormwater treatment
Sure.
of of what was coming off of that road. Now I know that we've also hyper elevated one side of the road to have it make sure that it runs toward that swale and into.
That's correct.
The intention was into that bioretention basin that was there, and we've lost that feature here. Can you speak to why we've lost that feature?
Well, when we were out there in the field, we felt like where we have that long length of a grass swale, and then where the swale ends, we'll say at the end of the word extension, a little further down from the road that you were just speaking of, at that point, it would flow overland a couple of 100 feet until it hit the BVW in the back of the property. So we felt like flow over existing ground for 200 feet would provide enough of an opportunity for treatment. Having said that, we can certainly put the bioretention area back. We'd prefer to, if we were going to put it back, we'd prefer to put it just off to the side of the 12-foot wide proposed driveway to the new house, roughly right where the spot elevation of 157.7 is on that plan. Yep, going the other way, Mr. Chairman. Yep, a little more, right there. Yep. So just above the driveway there on our property, heading what would be in an easterly direction, pretty much right where you're moving the arrow back and forth. We would put the bioretention area back in that location. Would work the same as it did, and then it would still have the opportunity to flow over land for that couple of 100 feet to the larger BVW. So we'd be happy to put that back, Mr. Chairman.
Are you going to be, if you don't mind me asking, are you going to be sloping the road to direct flow into that basin? Are you designing this system to handle a certain amount of design flow?
The swale will all, the elevations work so it does get down to that bioretention area that we would be proposing.
So the swale will connect to the bioretention.
That's right. So anything that we would anticipate that most of the water is gonna leach and not really make it from Glen Road all the way down that roughly 300-foot long grass swale to get to that bioretention area, but certainly under some storm events, it would make it that far.
I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up one of the prior drawings to understand how that compares.
.320 was the watershed event, I think.
Yep. Yeah, that does have it, Mr. Chairman. Right above the word extension. And again, the reason we'd like to move it, I guess, easterly from that location, if we could, I mean, we could certainly put it back to where it is on the plan you show now, but if we can move it easterly towards the right, it would, it's an area where we're constructing the driveway already, so we would be disturbing that area already, you know, with the approval of this plan and building the new driveway.
So the basin's significantly smaller than what was originally proposed in this plan. If we were to put it easterly of where it was proposed in this plan,
it would be well, to be honest with you, we could make it the same size, Mr. Chairman. I can slide the proposed driveway, you know, in that location. We can have it more towards the middle of the end of a Glen Road extension to give us enough room to put the same size basin there.
So can you give me the reason why we can't just go with what the basin as it was designed in this 320 plan?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, we can certainly go back to that exact location. It's the same size. It gives us a little bit more room. We could certainly go with that location. We're building the swale anyway, so we're going to be working there anyways, Mr. Chairman. So we could certainly do that.
Is any other comments from the commission on the proposed driveway design and stormwater management?
I have some comments. I guess, you know, I'd want to see the finished stormwater features on the final plan. You know, because right now I'm looking at this and it doesn't show me how the surface runoff is going to be attenuated. So, you know, I guess, that's kind of what I want to see. Kind of similar to what the old drawing shows, but I just want more detail.
Anyone else?
I got nothing for this one. I'm good.
Yeah, this is Carol. So I don't have a comment about the driveway so much. This is a waiver situation, is that right?
Yes.
For the
Okay.
driveway.
Say again?
For the driveway?
Roadway.
Roadway,
Okay.
sorry, for the roadway.
Sure, okay. So I just want to check in with the waiver language in our regulations in 5033. I just want to read this. Avoidance, minimization, and mitigation have been employed to the maximum extent practicable, and the proposed work, including all mitigation measures and the natural and consequential cumulative effects of the work, will have no significant adverse effects upon any of the bylaw wetland values. So I'm not sure that we've covered all the values, Scott, yet.
Okay.
So we all know that I'm the big tree hugger among us. So I'd like to see something from you about wildlife and wildlife habitat impacts. On
leaving the driveway where it is currently?
Right. You said something about. See, I'm not on the video call, so I don't have a visual right in front of me.
Sure. Yep.
So
I mean, the plan right now is just to leave the driveway where it is and reconstruct it, but put it right back in the exact same location that it is currently and has been for 30-something years.
Okay, so there are no trees coming down, no.
Not for the roadway.
Okay, what about the rest of the proposed activities?
Oh, certainly for the house construction, there are trees coming down for sure.
Okay, and are those trees in a resource area?
Yes.
The limit of work is at the 50-foot no disturb zone, and the house was twisted so that it is presently, what is it, 86?
82, I think.
82 feet from the wetland.
Okay, so it's in a resource area, and is it true that to build a house that soils and trees will have to be removed, or is it already cleared?
No, the trees will have to be removed for the construction of the new home.
Okay, so when trees are habitat, and soil is habitat, and trees have a big impact on managing water. So, for instance, I have a couple of stats somewhere here. If we have, I don't know what there is for trees there, but I can tell you that according to the U.S. Geological Survey, one large oak tree can transpire 40,000 gallons of water per year. That's about 3,300 gallons per month. So that means that tree takes 40,000 gallons out of the soil and carries it up the leaves. So, taking out a tree has a big impact on our flood storage capacity. And I don't think any of us want to see 3,300 gallons of water in our basements. An 18-inch oak tree has a lifetime carbon dioxide equivalent of 4,600 pounds of carbon, even though it's not specifically articulated in our regs, but that is a value. I consider it to be, because we have an including but not limited statement in our values. And so I want to know about what trees are coming down, what impact that's going to have on wildlife. And when we're removing native soils, we're also having an impact on wildlife and wildlife habitat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that, Carol. I'd like to see a wildlife habitat, survey done for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, that sounds good. So my preference would be if you could use the New Hampshire model or method it's called.
Okay.
Another tool would be iTree. They have an eco mode that might be useful. Are you familiar with that?
To be honest, I am not, but I wouldn't be doing the wildlife habitat study, so I'll make sure that the person we consult with is familiar with those two methods.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Right. Do we have a public benefit here?
The waiver letter that has been submitted talks about improved treatment of stormwater runoff from the roadway. I would want to see that corrected in the waiver, Scott. This, I mean, because this is not a driveway; it's a roadway.
Sure. Understood.
So I think that's what they're stating as their public interest in this particular case.
They went a step further, Carol, to say that by keeping the driveway in its current alignment, they were cutting down fewer trees, which I think there was a few sentences that brought that to the benefit for climate change.
That's right.
So you're saying cutting down less trees has a climate change benefit?
I didn't say that. That was what was written in this way, in the report.
Well, this configuration of the roadway was better than the other one because it preserved more of the natural area.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we want. Still, okay. When it's all added up, we're looking for no significant adverse effects upon any of the values.
Okay.
Every tree, every little bit of soil and every shrub and every tree matters for wildlife and for water quality.
So you want that as a general feature. In this case, they're saying that is what the public benefit is by choosing the alternative that's closer to the wetland, they are saving more trees.
Oh, sorry, that's not what I'm saying.
That's what they're saying.
That's what we're saying, right? That by leaving the road where we have it proposed tonight saves roughly 12 trees, as opposed to if we moved it further away from the wetland, we would have to cut those 12 trees down. So we're saying leaving it here is the benefit is we're saving those trees. That's what
okay, I understand. I understand.
Okay.
In this part of the development.
Correct.
So I think there's a couple things that have come up tonight. One is having a better understanding of that the stormwater management is actually going to handle the water that's coming off of the roadway. And Carol's concerns about and Mike's concerns about the wildlife habitat disturbance that may be occurring where the house is located.
Okay.
Are you concerned about wildlife in other parts of this, Carol? Because the other part is they're using the existing footprint of the driveway for the new roadway.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know how to tease that out.
Well, could we just focus the wildlife habitat study on the proposed house and all of the associated work with the proposed dwelling, the septic system, the grading, everything like that, and not have to focus on the roadway being reconstructed, that existing area?
I'm not sure how you can make an argument that there's a value of saving trees where in keeping your existing road alignment without looking at the same scientific analysis.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my professional opinion. The commission should weigh in. I apologize for speaking up.
Oh, I appreciate you speaking up, Andrea. Like, I mean, none of us are wetland scientists, and
I take that back. I actually am, but thank you.
okay, thank you. Excellent. I'm so glad we have one on board. So I think most of us don't know what we don't know, and so that's why we need experts figuring this stuff out for us.
Okay.
So John, she just teed you up.
Yeah, I'm gonna defer. You know, for trees, I mean, this is a small development. It's not like it's a commercial development to me. They've done the best they possibly can for this project. You know, I mean, a wildlife study, yeah, you can ask for one. I mean, it's a very small house lot. I personally would not request one, but you know, the commission can go forth and request one if they would like. I'm probably going to abstain from that kind of request, but just want to weigh in on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in general for this particular project, I think a wildlife study is beyond what we would normally request. I'm not saying that I just think it's beyond what historically we've requested for a project of this size and scope. The dwelling itself is, you know, they moved it significantly away from the wetlands from what it originally was. We're talking 82 feet on a relatively level piece of property. So I think that on this specific project, we've asked for one recently on a different project that had much larger scale that I totally agreed with. This one here, I think it's asking the applicant to go a little beyond what we would normally expect, and I think it's a little above that. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you saying that and giving some history. But for me, as a, you know, I've been a commissioner not quite a year, and you know, as I'm learning and internalizing our regulations, the regulations are kind of all I have to go on. And I know that, you know, taking down one oak tree has, you know, oak trees support over 500 species of butterflies and moths, and there's all kind of wildlife that need those caterpillars from them to raise like birds. One pair of chickadees needs 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to raise one clutch of little baby chickadees. So every tree matters. There is an impact, and to me, you know, taking down one tree is a significant adverse effect, in that the definition of significant is has a role in. So if one oak tree has a role in our habitat or wildlife value, actually it has a role in both, then if it has a role, it's significant. And that's just one tree. When you're removing soil is like Mike Truhill said last time, that soil is teeming with microbes, and it has soil is habitat for hundreds of species of insects. So there is an impact.
I know, but I think that from my perspective, I don't think that it's realistic for us to request a wildlife study on every project that comes in front of us that has work in a buffer zone. And that's all that comes before us. And I think that would be a dramatic shift in policy for the board to request that on every single project that comes before us. And I think that I don't believe, from where I sit, that that's the intent of the bylaw or the regulations. But I mean, that's for a conversation that we can have otherwise. But I prefer not to have a policy decision discussed per se, you know, in this forum. But
Sure.
we don't always have to agree on everything, and without a doubt. So I think the applicant here is going to need to continue tonight and come back to us with drawings with the bioretention basin included on the drawings, and provide us with some additional information. What that additional information is at this point is what he chooses he thinks he needs to provide to us in order for us to be able to make our decision. And you know, if you know, and then we get to make that decision, and then we get to decide whether the public interest is enough. And that's probably the discussion we should also be having here, because I think that is something that isn't 100% clear. Are we satisfied, and we should tell the applicant now, are we satisfied that the public interest that's being satisfied here is simply improved stormwater treatment off of this roadway? Because that's all that's really being offered to us.
All right, that's a good question.
I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know all that information. What I do know is that, for instance, this road extension would have to attenuate all of Glen, or the Glen Road runoff. Isn't that correct?
No, it's just this length of double house. It's just from the cul-de-sac down. It's just the new roadway. The existing roadway doesn't have any drainage on it, though.
Okay. I guess my question regarding that is, this lot was subdivided by the original owner of this property. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
So I guess public interest, is there someone that owns that lot A right now that's separate from the original owner?
Lot A is
No, the original owner, Jeanette Kai, owns the entire parcel right now.
Okay. So the public is only one person currently, isn't that correct?
the new owner. Is that what you're?
Well, I'm trying to get a sense, because public is more than one person, isn't it?
Yeah.
One landowner, it doesn't equate to be the public.
Right. This is a private residential development.
Except that the drainage we're proposing, theoretically does a better job of controlling and handling the stormwater management, the stormwater runoff that goes to the existing wetland area than currently exists under the existing driveway.
Right. So what I'm trying to get at is, the person that's going to own lot A is not going to be the same as the person that's on lot B. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So potential future public interest would be to service the potential buyer of lot A, and also the current resident of lot B.
Yes.
So one thing to consider here, because I think this is going to be a bit of a challenge and because I think the public interest is fairly minimal at this point on the stormwater treatment. I think that's goes to the overall impact on this property. So I think it's important, but I think when we to minimize and mitigate the overall impact of what the work in the buffer zone is happening. But I think that the public interest may need to be something more substantial in that case in order to put this roadway in. And one of the things that was considered, and I can throw it up to the commission to see if it's something they might consider, and then you as the applicant decide whether or not it's something that you may consider as well, is that we're in the middle of a sign project and replacing signs around town on our conservation property, and we do about 5 or 6 of them a year. And if the applicant wanted to replace one of those signs at their cost, then maybe that would be something that we could consider as public interest. And there's conservation land right down the street from them. I'm sure the sign on that property hasn't been changed in 30 years and could use an upgrade. So. Something to consider.
Yeah, that is something that we've used in the past.
I think it's a great idea.
So Scott, do you need any additional information from us?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman. I think we understand what we need to do and what's been suggested. We'll certainly revise the plan and get some additional drainage information to you for that drainage swale, add the bioretention area. And I think we'll have to take the other information under advisement and speak to the property owners, my client, about it and see where we can go with that last suggestion.
Okay.
Right.
Andrew,
sorry,
go ahead, Carol.
I'm sorry, Rory. Where do we leave it about the figuring out the impacts on taking down trees and removing habitat? Scott, you didn't mention it just now.
I mean, we would obviously prefer not to have to go through the added cost and expense of a habitat study, to be honest with you, for a single family home. I think we would agree with what the chairman said is, for a project of this size, we would certainly argue that it's, that it's not necessary. For a bigger job, it would certainly make a difference. And I do understand that one tree coming down makes a significant difference. But I mean, on the other hand,
Scott, could you perhaps, and I'm offering this as a suggestion, and it may not satisfy Carol and Mike's desires, and so I'm just offering it up as an idea. Is it possible for you to quantify the number of trees greater than 6 inches in diameter, 8 inches in diameter that may be coming down, so that we understand what those are? And I don't even know if that's the right number. Maybe it's 10 or 12 inches that's coming down in order to do that house construction, just so that we can have a quantification of what some of the habitat loss is, maybe.
Sure.
And so I'm talking about trees that are in the resource area.
Yep.
Because that's what we're talking about here.
Understood. We certainly could, and I have, just to back that up, I have had discussions with my client about that, and to be honest with you, their concern with my limit of work area was whether or not they would be required to remove all the trees within my limit of work area. That they wanted to keep as many trees as possible. So I think we'd certainly be able to do that, and they don't have any intention or any desire of even clear cutting everything within my limit of work area. They'd like to leave as many trees as possible, just to preserve that existing environment. So we can certainly do that, Mr. Chairman, and come back with a quantity that we do have to take down for the home construction.
Yeah, Roy, I like that idea. That'd make me feel comfortable.
Okay.
There is the iTree app was referred to earlier. Do you want to take that quantified number and put it into the analysis, or leave that for another day?
Yeah, well, this is Carol. I'd like to see, you know, if we have a head count of the varieties, you know, the species and the number of species, you know, within each species, what number of specimens do we have? If that could be plugged into the iTree echo mode, I think that would be extremely useful. And I would add that, you know, while it can be a burden for a, you know, for a single home to have to make the effort of doing the wetland and wildlife habitat evaluation, maybe in the past we haven't required this of applicants, but still we have our burden of proof standards. To get a permit for work, the applicant has the burden of proving by a preponderance of the credible evidence that any proposed work and its natural and consequential cumulative impacts and effects shall have no adverse effect upon the values and further shall contribute to the protection of those. So even though we don't have a habit of pushing for burden of proof, it's right there in our regulations, and we have room for improvement in standardizing that demand for the burden of proof.
So any public comment on 7 Glen Road? Seeing none. Scott, when do you want to continue?
When is your next meeting, Andrea?
June 6th. Your client is here. Does she want to talk? She didn't.
Sure. Sure, I'd be happy to. Sure, continuation to that date would work. I did want to comment on Carol's concern related to trees. We actually, I think you're aware, this is a private way. This has been land that's been in my family for 100 years. It is an old forest down here. And Carol, we are aligned with keeping as many trees as we can. So Scott is correct in, you know, when we actually push back on what that silt line area should be, we would like to actually keep as many of those big old trees as we can. So I think that makes perfect sense for us to be counting the ones that will be, you know, have to take down. I have no idea how that compares to an average house being built in Easton and how many trees would be taken down. But, you know, if that would help, we're happy to do that.
Thank you. It would be very helpful.
So Scott, you want to continue to June 8th?
Yes, please.
So I make a motion to continue 7 Glen Road to June 8th.
Spady, second.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, folks. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. So next up on the agenda is the extension request for Maplewood Country Day Camp, permit number SC 152-1198, Easton 0948. Whoa, that's a low number.
Let's bring up John Novak. And there's Lee. Hey, Lee.
Hello. Hello. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, this the Maplewood Country Day project. The property has most recently had an management plan for the lake that you might have heard in January. We annual report for, but this is for the landside improvements, which were the septic repair, the Septic repair is just about done, right? And then the other improvements have not yet gone through. Maybe you can tell us more about it, Lee?
Sure. Is John there too?
Yeah, John is.
Oh, John's there. Yes, I mean, the septic is almost completed, and the project regarding an additional building with hopefully a pool and classrooms, we put on hold before, after it was 2008 or so, or 9, because of financial economic difficulties during the crisis there. And after doing the septic system, we were hoping to move forward. And sure enough, we have this crisis going on now. So the need to extend, and hopefully to extend, would be important at this time.
So the work that remains is the swimming pool shelter.
Yes.
And so the septic system we expect to get done this year sometime.
It's done. It's
Okay.
completed. We're just planting grass now and finishing up. We'll probably plant the trees in the fall, cooler weather.
What else is open on this permit for work at this point?
John, do you want to jump in there?
John, we can't hear you, John. I'm not showing John with any audio or video on his.
John, which is your audio? Coming on by phone?
John, is that you on the phone? No.
Did you guys unmute me?
On the phone, we did.
Hello?
Yep.
All right. Sorry, had some computer problems with my audio. So, what is still remaining?
Go ahead, John.
Okay. Yeah. So the drainage installation for the pool shelter is also still outstanding. Like Lee said, we pretty much, it's the seeding and the minimal tree plantings that are around the pond that's remaining in front of the buildings as you drive in. So all that's really left is area that is in the edge of the riverfront, and then also the drainage that ties in, that would be into the buffer, and then kind of is directed as the outlet towards the wetlands. So we have minimal work left in the buffer zones, but it really becomes the reason that it's kind of phased this way is that we had to install the septic to be able to do the changeover, so that all of the new flow that would be coming from these additions would be able to be handled prior to the installation of the buildings. So there is, I believe, 25 subsurface chambers out in the back that is piped underground and then is discharged inside of the buffer zone towards the wetland in the rear that we still have outstanding to do.
So, I mean, I think that one of the things here, I mean, this is the fourth request I think we've gotten for an extension over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that there has been some pursuit in this. I think we did add some regulations this year that I just want to bring to your attention, that that you must, in order to get an extension, you have to demonstrate diligent pursuit. So I think at this point, moving forward, I'm in favor of an extension on this, but I think that over the next however long we give you an extension for, up to 3 years, if this project doesn't continue to move forward in a diligent manner, then we would probably not extend it and then request you to issue a new NOI. And I know there are economic circumstances that are trying for all of us right now, but I think that's just the nature of the regulations at this point. So.
That being said, right now we do have polling for permits so that the extension request, all deadlines that occur now during the state of emergency can be moved forward until the state of emergency is over and possibly 45 days after. So we could give them a couple extra months. This doesn't. Normally, you do the extension from the date of when it would expire, which would be June 20th.
Okay, I mean, I'd be happy to consider that. So, does anybody else on the commission have any comments?
No, I feel like what you're saying, Rory, is on track, and I'm totally in agreement of that.
Yeah, none for me either.
Carol, anything? You're on mute, Carol. Oh, unmute. Oh, sorry, Carol. There you are. You were muted.
No problem. Yeah, I have nothing to add.
So, can I make rather than throw the 45 days in, since we're not 100% sure of that, can I just say 3 years from the end of the state of emergency is declared by the governor? Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to grant an extension on Easton permit 0948 DEP 152-1198 for 3 years from the end of the governor's current state of emergency due to COVID-19.
Or June 20th, whichever is later.
Or June 20th, whichever is later.
Thomas, second.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield, aye. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for your time. Have a good night.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Night, night.
Okay, next up is minutes. Let's handle April 13th first. Anybody have anything?
I do. Carol does.
Go for it.
Do we have other people in the? Okay, sorry, my mistake.
Again, so there's something about the proposed multi-home development. Is the Prospect or Foundry Street? I forget. Where Mike Two Hills is working.
Yeah, Foundry. Yeah.
Yep. So there's a detail in there that I would like us to capture. I'm sorry I don't have a page number, but it has. He was talking about. He mentioned a gentleman named Joe Larson, Larson, who's at UMass. Mike Two Hills said that he and Joe have been on MACC panels together, and that Joe speaks harshly about the concept of wetland replication. That Joe has seen examples of wetland replication that have failed the test of becoming a wetland. So I think it's important to capture that. I don't know.
Is it in? It's in the April 13th meeting.
Yes.
Okay, I'll insert it. If Joe.
Yeah, I think it's.
So it's not in here, and you want it included in here? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Correct. Yep. I'm sorry I didn't create a context, but yes, that's correct.
Okay. I guess I'd want to go back and rewatch exactly what it says before we reinsert it. So
yeah,
we can we can defer these minutes for now. Anybody else have any other comments?
I got nothing.
None for me either.
Okay, so we'll defer April 13th for now until next meeting, when we have a chance to insert that additional information. May 4th, any comments?
Nope.
I make a motion to accept May 4th, 2020 minutes as presented.
Lundin, second.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Beanie, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield's aye. Thank you. The Concom meeting on June 22nd is a Monday. That's when currently the annual town meeting is scheduled for. So we have to move that meeting. Is there a proposed date? Do we move it into the 23rd or some other date, Andrea?
Keith, did you check the Zoom accounts?
No, I didn't get a chance to, Andrea, sorry.
Why don't you tell us which, we have two Zoom accounts, so we'll check to see which is available. If you tell us which days work for you. I can do that right now, but you guys keep talking. Tuesday, Wednesday, or the following Monday, June 29th. Or Thursday.
I can do any day but Thursday.
Yay.
I'm open and free, so have at it.
Yeah, Carol.
Carol, did you have a preferred day or time?
Say again?
Did you have a preferred day or time?
Who are you speaking to?
Carol.
Oh, I'm sorry. You must not have heard. I'm flexible.
Okay. I can't do the 29th, but I can do any other day that week.
So I would stay away from Mondays since the town meeting hasn't been firmly established to be on the 22nd. That could easily be on the 29th as well.
The 29th was its backup day.
So is the 23rd available for us?
Yeah, at the moment, the 23rd has, nobody's, Zoning Board of Appeals Zoning Board of Appeals and Historic Commission are both tentatively scheduled for the 23rd, but 24th is free. Wednesday?
Okay. Does that work for everybody?
Yes, Carol, yes.
Okay, so do we need a motion for this? We're just going to reschedule.
If you guys are, I don't think it needs to be a motion. We're rescheduling the 22nd to the 24th.
Correct.
Cool.
Okay, 34 Brentwood enforcement.
Okay. I spoke with the attorney. There is now an attorney associated with the project and for the McLaughlins. And he sent, and I spoke to him since your last meeting, asked him to give us information for tonight's meeting. And he said that his client does understand the need to identify the water elevations both up and downstream of the dam before deciding whether to take the boards down or not. And he said he will explore hiring a surveyor to do that work and would like to be continued to the July meeting.
So this is the same work that we've been asking for months?
That would be the work. Now he recognizes the need get it done. It is the same work. I got a little feisty. You got a little feisty. I passed it on.
Thank you. So we really don't have any additional information on 34 Brentwood, other than the fact that they want a couple months to find an engineer to go out
and the attorney's been hired.
And the attorney's been hired. Okay. So,
we have an existing enforcement order.
So at this point, 222 or 226 Bay Road, I don't remember the exact, is being held up because this is the same property owner?
Yes.
Or it's his father or something?
It's the same general, it's McLaughlin, whether it's the father or the son.
Right.
It's the same property. It is literally downstream of the woods where this dam is located.
Okay, and I do see somebody who has public comment. We'll get to you in just a second. So, is there anybody else from the commission who has any comments about this?
I mean, I'm a little disappointed it's taken this long. Not sure what we can do, but I mean, this has gone on for a long time.
You can put in more. You can accept his timeline, or you could change his timeline. I personally think July is reasonable for the professional work to be done. You can look at fines. You can initiate fines after a certain. You can say you're going to initiate fines after a certain date. And those are your two. I believe those are your two options.
I mean, I think in the interim, I don't want to turn this, sort of sit there and say, okay, it's May 19th, and we aren't going to see him until July 15th. I think he's got to give us updates on, is he hired the surveyor, the engineer? Give us some sort of update in the interim. How many weeks we give him to get to that point to show us that he's actually hired somebody to do it and it's been scheduled. I don't know, maybe that's a 3 or 4 week period that we sit there and say, okay, in 4 weeks, I want an update. And I want to see that you've actually got a contract in place and it's scheduled.
I think if you want to get it done in July, you should have him give you an update for the June 8th. He should be able to hire someone by June 8th. He should hire them by June 8th and then have a timeline.
Okay.
Otherwise, be done by July.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, I'm in favor of that. Mike or Carol, anything?
No, I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, that sounds good to Carol too.
So I'm just good. We have Aaron Hooker Thomas. I'm going to unmute you, and you had some comment about this, Aaron? I have unmuted you.
Your hand is raised. Aaron, do you want to type in your comment?
I'm going to go to Attorney DeLisi, I think, while she works out her audio problem.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
I can now, yep.
Oh, very nice. Thank you very much. I appreciate the commission keeping on this matter. My client, as you might recall, is Sarah Welcome. She owns 116 Randall Street, and she's observing a backup on her property, or which she perceives to be a backup as a result of this dam. I would just kind of point out to the commission that there is a bit of a public health issue that arises every year with the whole Tripoli and the mosquito thing. And that is something that's directly related to standing water. My client owns a farm. It's something that she's concerned about. And so I just would like to encourage the commission to continue to kind of keep this matter on kind of a short leash. I know that you're discussing June 8th as a higher by date, but really it sounds like you're only looking for some elevation. So I would just encourage that the commission continues to kind of keep on this and see if maybe we can get the data prior to July so that we can analyze this and figure out what to do. That's all.
Okay.
Additionally, I just actually, while I have you, I think that it's probably prudent to encourage the Department of Public Works to continually kind of clean and just make sure that that culvert is operating properly, because water can be dammed by a dam and water can be dammed by something else in a pipe. So I just want to encourage that might be done. I know that it's not per se your jurisdiction, but and I know that Andrea has been very, very good at following up with DPW. So I just want to continue that encouragement. That's all.
DPW has responded to a letter on that request and said that it's on their timeline. They're aware of the need for it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
They're busy at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to go back to Aaron or Thomas to see. Aaron, can you hear us now? Can we hear you? Aaron, are you there?
Aaron, can you type comments?
No, I don't see the chat box on this.
Yeah, I don't see a chat box either. I guess you can't type comments.
Sorry, Aaron, if you want to call in, the dial-in number is 646-558-8656. And Attorney DeLisi is back on.
I'm sorry to be a pest to everybody while we're waiting for Aaron. Andrea, I'm just wondering if you're able to share the name of the attorney. Perhaps it might be productive for me to have a conversation with that individual. I know you might not be able to share that information, and we can have that conversation another time, but that's something that I would welcome if you're able to.
Chairman, would you like me to forward that information by email?
Just trying to figure out his standing in this. That's my concern. Because the enforcement order is between us and 34 Brentwood, not between Sarah Welcome and so that would be my concern. So I mean, it's probably a matter of public record at this point, but I don't know. I'll talk to you tomorrow, Andrea. I don't mean to be. I'm not trying to be a hindrance, Attorney DeLisi, but especially in a public meeting like this. So.
And I don't mean to be a hindrance either. I understand the position you're in, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Okay, we have I'm gonna try and see if this is Aaron. Aaron, is that you? Aaron, is that you? Aaron, is that you?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You're gonna want to
close out.
Yeah. I'm gonna just close out of it. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. No, I was just calling in because my husband and I have been obviously monitoring this because we're concerned we're the ones that are in the flood zone on Pheasant Lane. And we just wanted to raise concern that this is taking a long time. Stefan definitely said it on the last meeting. on the 4th, stating that, you know, this has been going on for a significant amount of time. So anything you could do to kind of push this along would be greatly appreciated.
We agree wholeheartedly, I believe. So we'll be asking them to give us an update next meeting, so we understand that they're actually making progress on this.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being persistent on getting in touch with us. So.
Yes. Thank you for being patient. Sorry.
It's no problem.
For those of you who are not with us when this project, when 222 Bay Road started, Aaron Hooker actually provided video of how the property that's floods.
Yes, significantly. And I have even more video from the past couple of rainstorms, and it's getting worse and worse. And like Carol was saying, the amount of trees that are going to be taken down is going to severely or seriously impact the water that's going to be headed right to my house. And I'm really concerned about the boards as well, because I grew up in this house. I've been in this house for 38 years now. And I've seen the amount of water and how it's changed significantly. And now it all makes sense because of the boards, because that stream used to flood and now the water is going in different ways.
Yeah, I'm dealing with another project like that in Sharon, similar kind of situation. It's not fun.
No.
It's been happening for a while.
Yeah, it's flooding my yard differently now, and I never understood why until the woman over on Randall spoke up, and I'm like, oh, now it all makes sense, because the timeline from when the property was bought on Pheasant Lane and the water changing, it's too coincidental.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'm just looking out honestly for my investment in my house, because I don't have a whole lot that, you know, this is my investment. And if I start having a house that's flooding worse than it already is, that's going to impact how much my house is worth.
Understood.
So.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for all you're doing.
No, I appreciate you sticking with us.
Good night.
Good night. There is one more member of that I don't recognize. Walter, I can unmute you.
Dozer. Yep, he's my neighbor.
Okay. Well,
is he here for support, or does he want to comment?
He might want to comment.
I think he's got himself muted, I think. So. Okay. So I guess you must have covered everything Walter needed. So.
Well, we do know that he's a neighbor of Aaron's. He's in a butter to the development at 222 Bay Road.
Right.
Yes, he's the one that has the water that goes directly down between his and Mr. Bridges' property, which is the house closest to the house that was purchased to be knocked down and built behind.
Okay.
All right.
Appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give her our best, Walter.
Yeah. Yeah, Walter. Okay, then. Environmental planner updates?
I did get a. Okay, those look old. I got the MVP grant. The action grant is supposed to be that we're removing the concrete old farm structures at CM Wright. We're supposed to be down, or at least supposed to be started for June 30th deadline. Given the state of emergency, I was able to request an extension. So the project, we keep the money through next fiscal year, and the structures do still come down. I have a surveyor lined up to finalize contracts with. So we haven't lost the grant. We just moved it to another. We were able to move it to the next fiscal year. And that's about all I've done in the last week.
Brilliant.
Sounds productive to me.
It's a different world.
Oh, that's for sure. So we've been talking about some regulatory changes over the past few months, and I thought that a great place to start, even in Stefan's absence, was to sort of talk about some guiding principles about even before we talk about exactly what we want to change, and start talking about topics, that we just talk about what the guiding principles that we may want to consider. In my time here, we've been through 2 or 3 sets of regulation changes, about 1 a year, some larger, some smaller. And these were the guiding principles that we developed prior to us sort of going down that road, so that we didn't have to have a discussion exactly about what are we trying to achieve. I think that before we go into this, it's important for us to understand as a group, what is it that we want to come out of this regulatory revision. So I know this was circulated prior to the meeting a couple of times. Keith did it once again just before the meeting, or Andrea did. So I appreciate that. So I didn't know if anybody had any comments about it.
Do you all have a copy of it, or would you like me to put it on the share screen?
I have it. Carol has it.
I have it too. I'm just gonna pull it up.
Yeah, I have it as well.
There you go. Cool. I can see it nice and big on my screen.
Maybe I'll do it just for public record purposes.
There's, I got it, Rory.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I do too, so but go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so as we talk about this, I think this is number one, sort of. It sort of is, to me, sort of the overarching aspect of this is really finding that balance between protecting the wetland resources and reducing impact on any neighboring lots, while treating the applicants fairly at the same time. And I think that's fairly and equally. I think that's one of the challenges that we as a commission have to undergo. The other thing that anybody who's read these regulations know that they are very lengthy, very convoluted, and very repetitive. And they even state things a couple different ways, so you're not quite sure it's consistent between sections. So I think that that's something that takes a little bit of a rewrite to do. You basically have to restructure the regs in order to do that, because you have to remove all that sort of dense language from each section and sort of put it in an overarching section that you can reference every time, and then just get to the meat of each one of the buffer zone resources, or the resources in the buffer zone, and talk about that rather than sort of the regulatory aspect about each one of them. So I think, and lastly, obviously, it's something that you've heard us talk about, is just having the applicant be able to come into the hearing process understanding what's expected of them, because it's in the regulations of what's expected to them. So, any comments? We want to propose any changes to it? I mean, I'm not talking about what the actual regulations we want to change here, but really just what the principles are about why we're going about this.
Yeah, this is Carol. I'll start. Thank you, Rory, for creating the context. I think it's really important that we agree to how we want to go about this. I think without that, we're going to spend more time than necessary and not be as efficient. If we can keep an overarching context in mind, that will be a really super big help. So thank you for that. I agree about number one, seeking the right balance between protecting the resources and, taking care of the neighbors. And at the same time, I want us to keep in mind the regulation, the bylaw itself.
I feel like what's missing in this document may be a mention of the bylaw, which is really the guide that we must always abide by. And I think that treating applicants fairly has to do with applying the regulations fairly and consistently. I don't see us, pursuing changes to the bylaw. So, just smoothing out in ways, Rory, that you suggested, I think is really, really good. As far as number 2, I'm all in favor of that. Yeah, I have a couple of other comments that really don't have to do with the guiding principles.
So can I just make a comment? I don't think that as we get into the regulations, we may find that we want to change the bylaws. So I don't know that a change in the bylaws, because to do some of the things related to climate change, it may be best to actually put that into the bylaw, that we want climate change resiliency to be a wetland value, as opposed to and other things. That we may want to enumerate that into the bylaw itself, so that the regulations have more teeth. So I'm just suggesting that I don't think making a bylaw change is off the table. It's certainly easier to change regulations because we only have to agree to it amongst the 5 of us, as opposed to a bylaw change has to go before town meeting. But I'd say that it isn't off the table for me. So
yeah, I'll add to that. I think it's probably easier to change the regulations than a bylaw if we're looking to get it done sooner rather than later.
No question. Agreed. Yeah, we can change the regulations in a few months.
Right.
A bylaw change is a year or 2 process.
Yeah, it could be a longer process. Who knows how this COVID thing's going to play out? I don't know.
Correct.
Yeah, that's where I think the including but not limited to lists can work in our favor. But that's getting into the nitty-gritty that maybe we don't want to tonight.
Yep.
So I have a topic of discussion I'd like to talk about, kind of with the wildlife habitat protection guidance that we kind of brought up previously on one of the prior projects. So the state has a program, and typically it revolves around direct impacts to wetland resource areas. That includes riverfront area and BLSF. So in those impact areas, it's kind of where you would go through whether the project needs a wildlife habitat evaluation if they're significant. The form is actually online. It's called the Wildlife Habitat Protection Guidance, and it's Appendix B. It's called the Detailed Wildlife Habitat Evaluation. There's also a Simplified Wildlife Habitat Evaluation. So that's kind of the process that DEP has, but that requires direct impacts. I don't know how we want to work that kind of into the town bylaw or the town regulations, because the town is a little bit more strict than DEP. So I guess, what town of Easton considers, a perennial stream or a tier 2 or tier 1 with a 200-foot riverfront area off of it or buffer, it's considered an intermittent stream for, other towns and for the state. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at with it to the commission is, do we want to make our own wildlife habitat evaluation for, the different tiers of streams, or do we want to just go by the state impacts for habitat evaluation on how they operate?
And I think those are some of the topics we're definitely going to need to get into, because because I think it's going to be important for us to know when we want a wildlife habitat evaluation and when we don't.
Right. So for now, we can defer to the state requirements, because that's what it is within the, this Wetlands Protection Act. So it's there if we need to use it, but we're going to be limited to any sort of impacts or any sort of, projects in front of us that trigger this through, the state classifications. So like the project that we saw previously, for the single lot, subdivision didn't trigger any of these. There was no direct impacts to wetlands. There was no riverfront area. There was no impacts to BLSF. It wasn't within any sort of habitat area, no natural heritage, no vernal pools. So there was no sort of issues regarding that. So I think that's kind of, that's why I was, I wouldn't suggest requiring one for that kind of project.
And I think that if we decide that we want to start seeing some of those impact analyses done, that we should be, and this is just an overarching thing. I don't want to really get into the discussions about this, but I think those are the things we have to discuss about when to require them, and so that the applicant knows when they come in that that's going to be part of what is necessary to be done. Whether it's making sure that we're understanding what trees are coming down and which ones aren't, that are in the buffer zone and whatnot. I think those are the types of things. And when we're talking about principles, that's part of what I'm talking about. In number 3 is establishing those clear expectations in the permit process, so that they don't get a request. The applicant doesn't get a request, well into the permit process for something they didn't anticipate. It could have been done months ago, but now we're late into the permit process. They're trying to get the permit so they can start building, and they're getting hung up again for another couple months because of a request. I'm not saying that. I just want to make it clear that both us to streamline the process. I don't want to have a project that I have to have 4 hearings on that's a single dwelling home.
Right.
That really shouldn't take. I mean, 2 hearings I could see, 3 maybe in this case, but we're going to go to our 4th hearing on this particular property, and I'd like to streamline that for us as well as the
completely agree.
I would like a little more guidance, or maybe articulation of number 1. When all of you are comfortable with the language, seek the right balance between protecting wetland resources in the neighboring and the impact on neighboring lots while treating applicants fairly. I read that as the balance between protecting wetland resources and the neighbors, and balanced against treating applicants fairly and equally. And do you all agree on what kind of balance are you trying to strike? Are we trying to balance, or are we trying to lean more in one direction than the other between applicants' righs and our wetland protection values? I just would like to understand as a group what you think that means.
Right, that's a good question, Andrea. This is reminding me that when I appeared before the select board for my interview for this seat on this commission, the chair of the board, one thing I remember her saying was, we have laws and bylaws. Let's implement them. This is kind of simple. It's like we have laws. Let's apply them. So I don't see it as lessening our responsibility to implement the laws and balancing that against treating neighbors fairly. I think laws are laws, and we have to abide by them.
Can't agree more with that. I mean, absolutely need to abide by them, without a doubt.
We're talking about changing them.
Say again?
We're talking about possible revisions to the regulations.
So as we go about changing the regulations, I'm not talking necessarily about enforcing the ones we have in place, but changing and modifying the ones we have, is that it's about, from the way I read that statement, is really it is about striking that balance between the property rights of a landowner and the wetland protection. And so there has to, I think there needs to be a balance between those two. and we can do that within the bylaw and within the regulation. I'm not necessarily looking to make the wetland regulations within the town so draconian that it's impossible to do any work in the town. I just want it to be done in a manner that's protecting of the wetland values, at the same time finding that balance for the applicant to be able to move forward with the project if it fits within the regulation. I think that's what it means to me.
Right. It's to add on to that, Rory. I've said before that the state and local regs are compromises between development and conservation and public interests, and so that the compromising is kind of mostly done and baked into the regulations and bylaw and state law. So, you know, I don't want to hurt people, but I also, the law is the law. And you know, many people don't understand why, if they own property that happens to be, you know, partly a resource area, why there any law should apply to activities they want to do. Well, it turns out there's good reasons for it. So maybe this is an opportunity for public outreach and helping people understand what the wetlands do for us.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I don't think it's the 5 people on this commission that we have to convince that there's value to the wetland resources, and that's what we're trying to support here, whether it be flood control, water quality, wildlife habitat. Just I think that you know, those things are very important, and as things continue on through whatever changes are happening in the world, those things become maybe even more important. And I think we have to find a way to continue to find that balance between making sure that we're looking forward, not just a year, but 10 years, 20 years, 30 years out, that we've taken enough steps to protect that within what we're doing. At the same time, not making it impossible for someone to do a project that isn't going to have an adverse impact on the wetland. I'm just talking about what number 1 means to me.
Sure. Yeah.
If the language works for everybody, that's fine. They become the guiding principles for this commission.
Right. So is statement number 1 subject to interpretation?
I think it is absolutely going to be subject to some interpretation amongst you as an individual.
And you can even say that if it doesn't, you can suggest different language. This was compromised language when it was written.
But one of the things I do want to point out is that it is 9:30. I don't want to go on and on. I mean, I was hoping to be done by 8:30 tonight, but you know, we got into a couple of long conversations, so that's good. So I mean, if there is language, we can either, you know, if we don't have an answer right now, I really don't want to wordsmith this here in this. If we want to come back at the next meeting to finalize this and you know, then maybe have the next step of conversations of topics we want to, specific topics we want to start addressing, and maybe in phases. That might be an approach to do this. So I don't want to wordsmith it right now. I mean, we could spend another half an hour wordsmithing it, and that really isn't what I think is good use of our time.
So would it be best for folks to send any wordsmithing of this to me, and then I'll gather everybody's And when we send out the agenda for the next meeting, I'll give you all the language in one document for you to mull. And also I can send out the list of topics that I presently have been keeping. That includes topics from past members and the stuff I've heard from these members. And you can also edit that stuff and send back to me.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrea.
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds like we have a plan. Anybody else have anything else to offer?
I do. One thing I want to thank whoever got this together, whoever idea was, Keith, if it was you, sending the packet for tonight was wonderful.
Good, thanks.
We don't have,
could use it.
yeah, we don't have our 3-ring binders anymore, but I want to acknowledge you for creating that. It was a very big help. There are 2 things I want to touch on. One is I had mentioned about the minutes for April 13th, I think it was. Someone is going to listen out for that comment that I made that I would like to see added. I think that's around the 2 hour and 4-minute mark. Whoever is going to take that up, that's when to start listening. Another thing, sorry?
Did you hear that, Keith? I hope Keith will do it.
Yeah, that would be the 14-hour and 3-minute mark on that. Yeah.
So I want to ask if it's appropriate for me to comment on the Foundry Prospect Street, the big project.
No, because there's no public. It's not on the agenda.
Okay. All right. So there's one other
opinion, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, no, I would prefer that, given the nature of that project, that we only have discussions about that when it's on the agenda.
Sure. Okay. So there's one other thing. Like there's no good time for any of this. So I would just like to say it. I would like us to revisit our recent negative determination for an RDA for number 6 Stillwater. You'll remember it's off Lincoln Street for the last building lot in a development where that lot was used as a staging area, and now a house is going in. After our vote approved a negative determination, the applicant received a document from us that says the work described in your request is within the buffer zone as defined in the regulations, but will not alter an area subject to protection under the bylaw. So to my fellow commissioners tonight, I have a few questions. How is turning a woodland in a resource area into a manicured lawn not an alteration, when the very definition of alternation includes removal or excavation of soil and destruction of plant life, including cutting of trees? How is it that we voted to go ahead without additional conditions, like, say, you can't use conventional lawn fertilizers? How is it that someone can build a stone wall in a resource area, but a wetland scientist on the big Foundry Street project recommends removing 2 stone walls for the benefit of the movement of wildlife? How is it that we figured that none of the activity would have any significant impact on any of the wetland values, instead of just doing what our regs say and requiring the applicant to meet that burden of proof? I believe that the proposed alterations do come under our jurisdiction, and the applicant has not met the burden of proof for an RDA. Therefore, I motion to reopen the hearing on 6 Stillwater.
Is there any basis to do that, Andrea? I've never heard of this before.
No, it was a majority vote to issue, and it's been issued.
So I mean, I don't know any way to retract that vote.
Yeah, you can't do that. Once it goes through, it's final.
I've never heard of it either.
Okay, well, if Andrea's never heard of it, And John, you've never heard it. Then I guess it surprises me that there's no history of a commission saying, hey, wait a minute, let's think about this some more.
Yeah, you can deliberate decisions, but not after the final vote.
Okay. Good to know. Appreciate it. And thanks for hearing me out.
Okay.
And there's one other little question. Is it possible, without a lot of effort, to get transcripts of our discussions on a project-by-project basis? For instance, a project that's going to have a lot of hearings over time, it could be, months and months and months or years. It's really hard for me to track the conversations that we've had on a particular application over time. So I wonder if it's possible, for instance, in the case of the Foundry Street project, to get transcripts on a project-by-project basis so that we can, we can refresh our minds about what we talked about before.
I mean, in an ideal world, that would be great. I mean, I just had my secretary transcribe meeting notes from some hearing that we had like 2 weeks ago, and it took her 10 hours. And we had probably about 6 or 7 projects on our agenda. So it's very time consuming. So just to let you know that it could be a process. I know there's lots of software out there with these Zoom meetings. It's great because you can actually have it kind of like text to speech, or for instance, if someone's talking, it will actually type the stuff out for you so you can read it. But it's just going to be very time consuming for whoever's doing the clerical work.
Yeah, I think John is right when he responds to what it means to transcribe a meeting. But there are the meeting minutes that you approve posted to the documents on demand on our town website.
Sure.
And so if you're reading if you get your information in to the meeting summary while it's fresh in your mind, the meeting minutes.
Except I just want to caution us, the meeting minutes are not meant to be a transcription either.
Right.
And in fact, I think that of any meeting minutes that are in town, ours are the most detailed of any one. It's not even in the ballpark. And there's not another board whose meeting minutes come close to the detail of ours. And I hesitate to put more burden on Keith to make those more detailed and to have us combing over them in a manner that is going to be us holding up issuing minutes because they don't say precisely the points we want to have included in the minutes, when the meeting is preserved for us to go back and refresh our memory about what went on the last meeting if we really want to watch that for another hour or two.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's I was just hoping that there would be a way, especially with our video meetings, that there was some piece of software to capture everything, and it would not be a burden. But if there's no such thing,
I don't know. I assume that there is probably some piece of technology out there. I have no idea whether we could implement it or not. And I'm probably certain it's not free either. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you'd have to pay for the service. I'm sure someone's already tried to make some money on it, just like Jeff Bezos from Amazon.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. It's just something, I don't want to burden anybody, Keith. I wish it were easier to track the conversations without having to go back in every set of minutes and extracting, the stuff from a particular application. So I just wanted to ask.
That's totally understood, Carol, but I know I've done things for Andrea for public records request, going back through 1 or 2 or even 3 years worth of minutes. It takes hours and sometimes days to extract the minutes of a particular hearing.
Yeah, I'm sure. like I said at the beginning of this, didn't want to be burdensome. I just wanted to ask. So the answer is loud and clear. So thank you for that. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I will accept one more motion this evening. Who's up for it?
Okay. This is Commissioner Lundin moving to end the meeting.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Lundin, aye.
Beatty, aye.
Thomas, aye.
Caulfield, aye. Thank you, guys.